Every gram of chemical propellant a rocket carries into space requires additional propellant just to lift it off the pad. It is a compounding penalty, where the vast majority of the energy is spent violently moving the fuel itself. This chart plots the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation. It dictates that as you try to increase your final velocity, your initial fuel mass must grow exponentially. This mathematical ceiling limits conventional chemical and nuclear thermal rockets to asymptotic escape velocities of less than 100 kilometers per second. To cross the immense voids to neighboring star systems like Alpha Centauri in a matter of decades rather than tens of millennia, we have to abandon the fuel entirely. This map of our local heliosphere outlines 3 distinct velocity tiers we must conquer. First, precursor missions requiring under 100 kilometers per second. Next, true interstellar medium probes operating between 100 and 400 kilometers per second. Finally, relativistic transits exceeding 15,000 kilometers per second. To reach these speeds, we must exploit the most potent, high-flux energy reservoir available, the Sun. We can harvest its output through direct photon sailing, active solar thermal propulsion, or concentrated orbital lasers. Escaping the solar system within a single human lifetime requires a transition from rocket engineering to external energy harvesting. The inner solar system is dominated by empty space, and harvesting solar energy requires navigating that geometry precisely. This formula maps solar radiation pressure. Because radiation flux follows an inverse square law relative to heliocentric distance, pure light pressure at Earth's orbit yields a negligible force of about 9 micronewtons per square meter. To fix this, a spacecraft must first travel outward to Jupiter. By using the gas giant's gravity to completely bleed off its heliocentric angular momentum, the probe essentially drops out of the sky. It falls into a highly eccentric parabolic trajectory, a Sundiver maneuver. By executing a perihelion dive inside 1/10 of an astronomical unit, the available radiation pressure and thermal energy multiply by 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. The bottleneck here is strict material physics. A conventional reflective polyamide sail, like Kapton or Mylar, breaks down thermally near 0.2 AU. Pushing closer requires extreme temperature substrates, specifically synthetic carbon-based foams like Aerographite, which possesses an ultra-low bulk density of just 0.18 kilograms per cubic meter. Aerographite behaves completely differently than a traditional sail. Instead of acting as a mirror, its high thermal emissivity allows it to operate as a perfect black body absorber. It absorbs the extreme solar flux down to 0.04 AU, turns white hot, and instantly re-radiates that energy into deep space without melting. Realizing the kinetic potential of these close solar orbits requires abandoning our traditional understanding of specular reflection in favor of total black body absorption. Direct photon pressure is passive. Active thermodynamic systems seek to harness the violent, high-temperature environment directly above the stellar surface. This chart models the Oberth effect. It proves that a propulsive burn executed at the deepest point of a gravitational well, where orbital velocity peaks, yields a massive gain in final asymptotic exit velocity. Historically, this maneuver presented a mass paradox. Shielding a rocket stage this close to the Sun required thick carbon phenolic plating. The sheer weight of that armor negated the kinetic advantage of the burn itself. This diagram reveals the modern architectural solution, solar thermal propulsion. Engineers integrate a channelized heat exchanger directly into a primary thermal shield coated with yttria-stabilized zirconia. During a 15-minute perihelion passage, cryogenic liquid hydrogen flows at a high mass rate through these embedded microchannels. The specific heat capacity of the hydrogen actively cools the shield matrix to prevent failure, while simultaneously absorbing the immense incoming solar heat. That thermal transfer superheats the hydrogen gas to 3,400 Kelvin. Expanding that fluid through a high expansion ratio nozzle produces a specific impulse near 1,000 seconds. That triples the efficiency of chemical rockets, yielding escape rates of 20 astronomical units per year. By converting the spacecraft's greatest vulnerability, thermal destruction, into the actual mechanism of its propulsion, we bridge the gap to the interstellar medium. Once a probe coasts outward, the local solar environment rapidly turns cold and dark. This curve tracks the limit of pure solar sailing. Sunlight decays along an inverse square law. By the time a probe reaches Jupiter, 96% of the sun's radiation pressure is gone. To sustain relativistic acceleration across astronomical distances, we station solar-pumped laser arrays at the Sun-Earth L1 point. They capture raw sunlight and collimate it into a narrow, directed energy beam, completely bypassing the local decay curve. Hitting an ultra-lightweight sailcraft with a multi-gigawatt coherent beam creates an artificial photon flux equivalent to thousands of suns. This equation defines the system's strict physical limit. Beam divergence is governed by diffraction. As the laser travels millions of kilometers, the spot size eventually expands past the diameter of the sail, causing energy spillover and ending the acceleration phase. Operating within these margins, a 100-gigawatt array illuminating a 1-gram sail reaches 20% the speed of light in a matter of minutes. To reach relativistic speeds, the propulsion engine cannot travel with the spacecraft. The infrastructure must remain permanently stationed at the energy source. Traveling at 60,000 kilometers per second cuts the transit time to the Alpha Centauri system down to just 20 years. But arriving at 20% the speed of light creates a terminal orbital mechanics problem. An unpowered probe will blow straight through the entire target star system in a few hours, severely limiting any data collection. This kinetic momentum diagram details the required momentum reversal mechanic, photobraking. The incoming probe must tilt an ultra-low mass-to-surface area sail directly toward the luminous surfaces of the destination stars. The intense photon radiation pressure emitting from Alpha Centauri A and B strikes the sail, acting as a continuous braking force against the probe's forward velocity. By combining this constant stellar push with successive tight gravity assists around both primary stars, the probe bleeds off its kinetic energy entirely, allowing it to drop into a stable parking orbit around Proxima Centauri. This delicate capture maneuver has a strict ceiling. For a graphene or aerographite sail, the incoming craft cannot exceed roughly 13,800 kilometers per second, or 4.6% the speed of light. Any faster, and it fails to capture. Genuine interstellar exploration requires perfectly balancing the power of our local solar acceleration with the specific optical braking limits of our destination. We do not need to wait decades. Anomalous interstellar objects like Oumuamua occasionally pass through our inner solar system, demanding immediate interception capabilities. This timeline maps our progression from near-term planetary defense to long-term relativistic flight. Phase 1 starts today, deploying sub-100-kilogram smallsats that execute autonomous Sundiver gravity assists, provides fast-response interception speeds of 5 to 10 astronomical units per year. Phase 2 scales up our thermal limits. Utilizing active solar thermal propulsion and aerographite sails, pushes velocities past 1,000 kilometers per second. This reaches deep scientific targets, like the solar gravitational lens focal zone, within a single researcher's career. Phase 3 represents the mature interstellar era. Constructing orbital megawatt to gigawatt orbital laser arrays pushes dielectric microsails to 20% the speed of light, enabling true exoplanetary transits. Realizing this roadmap relies entirely on solving a few specific engineering bottlenecks today. First, we must scale the laboratory synthesis of aerographite microtubes into robust macrostructures capable of surviving intense physical stress. Second, we must prove embedded refractory heat exchangers can maintain cooling flow under 1,000-sun optical concentrations during ground testing. Finally, we have to master the phase locking of massive space-based laser optics across huge orbital distances. Moving the energy burden from the vehicle's mass to the solar system's infrastructure turns interstellar flight into a solvable equation of materials and light.